Well, hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Tim and this is Find Life After Death. It's a channel that's dedicated to my family's journey following my wife's passing in May of 2024. If you're new here, please take a minute to drop a comment below saying what brought you here today. I'd love to just connect with my audience and possibly create a little community of support for each other. Also, feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you always know when a new video's been posted. Anyway, as we sit back and watch the riveting content of me cleaning my kitchen, I thought that I'd share some thoughts on grief and how it has impacted my life over the past almost 10 months since my wife Anna lost her battle with cancer. Now, don't click off if you're not in a season of grief, because grief comes for us all eventually. And maybe, just maybe, my journey through will help you navigate your journey at some point, or at least help you find a kindred spirit if that happens to be where you're at now. Grief's a funny thing. Not the laugh out loud kind of funny, but the kind of funny that drives you nuts. It's the kind of funny that will often bring out the thought, what the, and then, insert expletive or non-expletive of choice here. It's the kind of funny that just makes you feel like you don't know if the world will ever feel quote unquote right again. You know what it is? It's like those cartoons where the one character is always dropping anvils on the other character, and the first character finally avoids an anvil, only to open a door and get punched in the face by one of those spring-loaded boxing gloves. I hate the quote, "If you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans," because, well, that's not how he works. He does care about our desires for our future, but sometimes his plan is to take us down a different path. Sometimes that path has a bit more rocks and thorns than the one we would have chosen, but it's necessary sometimes to get us to appreciate the end more. What makes for a more interesting story? We walked down a flat and smooth path and eventually we got to our destination and we ate cake. Or, well, first of all, the rain was coming at us sideways as we scaled the side of the mountain. And then there was this mountain lion that I was able to scare off with a stick I found. And then we finally reached the apex. And then we collapsed in a heap only to discover we were on the wrong peak. And the lodge was on the next mountain over. And so on. You get the point. There's some excitement there. And it makes you appreciate the cake in the lodge more when you finally get there. Now, don't get me wrong, grief sucks. I'm not at a point in my life, in my journey, where I'm thankful for being in this season. Let me make that perfectly clear. I don't see the lodge or the cake yet, but I'm waiting with some expectation for what God has in store for me and my children. So, like I said, grief comes for us all in some form or another. Because what is grief, really? Well, the dictionary definition is deep sorrow, especially that caused by someone's death. And the clinical definition from the American Psychological Association sounds similar. It says that grief is the anguish experienced after significant loss, usually the death of a beloved person. And then it gets into various psychological and physiological symptoms. My definition would be that it's a gut punch of realizing that life will never be what you thought it would. We all have plans for, or at least a picture of our future. I'm going to get X job in my field of study, get married, have X number of kids, eventually become a grandparent with my spouse, travel the world, and die peacefully in my sleep at the same exact time that my spouse does. Or some variation of that. But life has a funny way of reminding us that as much as we plan, things don't often occur in the way we envision. And when we realize that the plan will never happen, there's a mourning for what could have been. So grief can come from the loss of a loved one, sure, but it can come from the loss of a job, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a favorite keepsake, the loss of a home, and so on and so forth. Loss leads to a deviation from, or even termination of, a future plan. And the hole that's left is where grief lives. Grief doesn't operate on any kind of schedule. You don't just get over it one day. Time does not heal all wounds. Time has nothing to do with it at all. It's how you spend that time that determines how you heal. But, like a terrible wound, even after healing, there's a scar. There's this quote from Johnny Resnick of the Goo Goo Dolls, shout out to my hometown boys, in their breakout single Name from the 90s. So if you were born after that time, go look it up on Apple Music or Spotify or your streaming platform of choice. And in that song, he sings, "Scars are souvenirs you never lose. The past is never far." And I honestly don't know if I've heard a more apt description of grief scars. You never lose them, and they will continue to remind you of the past. And another thing about grief not having a schedule is that the stages of grief, you know the ones, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, those stages don't proceed in any kind of set order. They don't even go away like you're checking off some kind of to-do list. Well, I didn't lie in bed all day today staring at the ceiling, so I guess I can check off depression now. It just doesn't work like that. You're gonna ping pong back and forth with no rhyme or reason or even any specific trigger. Some of the stages reoccur and stick around longer than others. Sometimes they happen at the same time. Heck, I lived in denial for almost 3 years as I walked alongside Anna through all of her treatments and watched how they destroyed her body bit by bit. I called it hope. And I do believe that's what it was, but what is hope other than denial in the face of an overwhelming circumstance and convincing yourself that there will be a positive outcome? Denial in the form of hope can be an amazing thing, don't get me wrong, and it gives you a ton of strength during horrible times. But hope deferred or defeated is terrible. But should we never hope for fear of defeat? Of course not. But it's just a fact that it hurts all the more when you allow yourself to hope and dream of a bright future while standing in a dark and windowless room and you never ultimately see the sun again. Bargaining happened in those times when I begged God to give the cancer to me and let her live. It happened when I begged for this next drug or procedure to be the one that finally served as the silver bullet to her cancer. It happened when I begged him to save her life after her pulmonary embolism. It happened when I begged for her brain scans to be normal, despite knowing that her brain was without oxygen for over 15 minutes. It's happening now as I beg God to help me find a way to avoid having to go back to a corporate job as the money allowing me to be a full-time stay-at-home dad for my kids dries up. Anger and depression often occur hand in hand in my experience. These are the ones that come back around a lot for me. I think that might be a guy thing, maybe. I get sad, and then I get angry that I'm sad, and it continues in a loop. Depression especially took hold of me. There were literal weeks where I couldn't get out of bed, or off the couch in my specific case, or care enough to do something as simple as take a shower for days on end. Yes, I smelled. No, I didn't care. Still happens some days. There are many hobbies that I haven't had the desire to do because they just don't seem to matter or thrill me anymore. People ask me how I'm doing, and I find myself lying and saying that I'm fine when I'm not. Now, there are days when I really am fine. I wouldn't say that I'm ever truly happy anymore, but there are days that hurt less than others. But sometimes it might just be a moment that I'm fine, but then there's some kind of trigger and I begin to spiral again. My therapist describes grief as a kind of square. At the beginning of the grief journey, your square is small. You're in the square, moving about your daily life, and your trigger's also in there with you. And because the square is small, you hit that trigger pretty frequently. But as time goes on and you put in the work, like going to therapy, the square starts to get bigger and bigger. You're still bouncing around and living life, but with the larger square, you hit the trigger less frequently. The trigger never truly goes away, but you can reduce the number of times it takes you out of commission. I do feel like my square is still a little small. It's gotten larger, but it's still small. So all this to say, grief is a part of life. If we care about anything or anyone, we'll experience grief at some point. And we'll all have a unique journey as we move through our specific grief. No one can tell you how long you get to grieve or live in a specific stage or how you're going to heal. Sure, a lot of times those little quote-unquote nuggets of wisdom are well-meaning, but what it often feels like is that people are sick of you grieving, and it's time for you to get over it already. I'm here to tell you that your feelings are valid. Take all the time you need for your journey. And if someone in your life is experiencing grief, give them as much grace and time as they need. There's no rushing this. It takes time to rebuild a life and make new plans. I want to thank you for sticking around and listening to me today. I'll be on a more normal uploading schedule after this. I was sick for about a week after my last upload, and then I had my kids home for a break for a second week, which prevented me from finishing this video for a time. So, barring any more of that, you should be seeing me at least weekly. No, I unfortunately did not finish the kitchen cleaning on this particular day. I was interrupted by needing to go pick up kids, and my ADHD didn't allow me the dopamine to get back into it after getting home. So, if you're okay without the before and after shots, and anything I said resonated with you today, please, again, consider subscribing to the channel. Click that notification bell to be notified when I post, and maybe share this with someone in your life that you think it might help. That's what it's all about. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm sharing this journey. Is that I want to help people. I want to give people hope. I want to show people that there's someone out there that feels the way that they feel, or at least some close approximation of it. So, share it. And I hope this helped you if that's what you needed today. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon.